Good day, fish tankers. People often ask me, what is the best fill in the blank for my aquarium? What is the best beginner fish? What is the best filter? What is the best heater? What is the best food? And in the end, it's very much, in some cases, tomato, and it's a question of your own experience. So I thought I'll just give you a list of things that I think are more or less the best in my experience. Keep in mind, I'm in South Africa. I don't have the products that you guys in the States or in the UK or in Europe maybe have. And I'm just going to talk about things that I have not necessarily using right at this moment, but have at least used in the past. So I can't really tell you about a RSA Biomaster canister filter because I've never used one. I'll say if you want to sponsor me, send one my way. Hint, hint. But so I can't answer you about things that I've actually never tried out. But I'm going to tell you what I think are, for me, at least for my sort of application, what I keep, which as you can see, are sort of low-tech planted aquariums, what I think are the best for me. If you're interested about that, and if you want to interact with me in the comment section and tell me what products and fish and plants you like that's the best for you, then stick around. Okay, fish tankers, let's start with a very, very basic thing. What is the best water? I'm talking about the water coming out of your tap. If I were to move where it will suit my aquarium or be the most, and if it's within my means, I probably will, then what would I prefer to be coming out of my tap? And I thought about it a bit. The knee-jerk reaction is you want water with a neutral sort of pH and hardness, so you can keep almost everything in it. But I disagree. I'm very privileged and I like the water that I have coming out of my tap, at least in terms of its characteristics. Sometimes it can be a bit murky, but we have very soft sort of acidic water here in Stellenbosch, just over 6 and almost no hardness at all. Why do I like that? Because if I want to keep discus or some Amazonian tetras, and if I were to breed them, I'm not really a fish breeder, it happens spontaneously these days in my tanks, but if I were to have that, then I've got soft water, soft acidic water already, so there's no adjustment required. And if I do want to keep things in harder water, like let's say some live bearers and whatever, to make soft acidic water into harder alkaline water is relatively easy. You just buffer it with something like crushed coral or even some cuttlefish bone. You buffer it with something like that, or even the bone meal that I have in the dirted part of a substrate helps as well to buffer the pH up a bit. It's easy to do that. That's not difficult. And if I want to go the other way with a soft black water type of tanks, I can do that. So if I want to keep Malawi cichlids, it's not my style of fish keeping, it's not my favorite fish, but if I wanted to, I can just put a aragonite or crushed coral substrate in. The water will be hard and alkaline, and there you go. However, if I had liquid rock coming out of my tap, to make that into soft acidic water is a huge headache, because how are you going to do it long term? You can hear Lulu barking in the garden. Sorry, this is not a studio. If you want to take hard water and make it soft, that is a big headache. I almost would skip it, because the only way you're really going to achieve that very well is by mixing RO water in with that hard water until you get the desired softness and acidity, or else you can use rainwater mixing in it. But turning hard alkaline water into soft acidic water is a lot more difficult than taking the soft acidic water that comes into my tap and making it neutral or making it hard and alkaline. So I like the soft acidic water that comes out of my tap. Next thing that we need is, of course, an aquarium. What's my favorite aquarium? I have these float glass boyo tanks, like the one next to me. It's been here for years and years, with rounded edges that I like very much. But I do like these low iron. I've never had the ADA tanks, but I've had the cheaper versions, like the Crab Aqua that we have here, that I have on my pea puffer tank, for example. I do like those low iron rimless tanks. So I would say that is my best tank that I've had. You know, you can have them up until quite a reasonable size. They are expensive, but this is not a video about budget. So I would go for those low iron rimless tanks, unless it's there'll be a size limit where you're going to have a bracing and stuff. And acrylic tanks we don't really have here in South Africa. Let me know in the comment section if you have an acrylic tank and you're in South Africa. I only see those in the two oceans, public aquariums and so on. Right, that's the tanks. Now, what is the best food for the fish? Now, it depends on the fish you keep, but if I have to go with dry food, right now what we have available in South Africa, I really like the denolay foods. They're the most expensive, of course, but they, you know, even the granulate for discus, it's great for finicky fish as well, and it's got a moist sort of structure. So I feed tetra, I feed ocean nutrition, but the denolay that I've discovered, I think that is a very nice food if it's within your budget. What about frozen food? Now, we are, once again, South Africa, we are more limited, but, you know, I stay away from these CampCon flat packs, especially when it's about bloodworm, because the cheap bloodworm they raise in big effluent in the east, so can carry all sorts of funny things into your aquarium. So I like the ocean nutrition frozen foods. And it's also not only the food, it's the ease of use of blister packs. And my favorite is the brine shrimp that's mixed in with some spirulina and garlic. I find that's a very nice frozen food for the fish, as well as a cyclops. That's good for the tiny nanofish. Really, onto nanofish. What is my favorite nanofish? Well, the best nanofish for me, Lulu is now drinking a water. It's just something we're going to have to deal with. But CPD, celestial pearl danios, are very nice, interesting little fish. I've kept them, but I find they get health problems, at least the ones I find here in South Africa. Over time, suddenly they have columnaris, they have hollow bellies. So I won't say that's my favorite nanofish. What I do like are ember tetras. They seem mostly hardy. They don't like it when it gets very hot, but ember tetras have been fairly uneventful for me. So I would say that is my best nanofish at the moment. Now, what is the best beginner's fish? Unequivocally, it's not guppies. It's definitely not goldfish. Those I don't think are good beginner fish in general, for reasons that I've discussed in another video that I've made before. I think the best beginner's fish is the white cloud mountain minnow. They're small, they're interesting, they've got good color, they don't even need a heater, so they're not really tropical fish. They can go in room temperature water, they can, so you don't even need a heater, and they're small, they can go in a 10-gallon tank, so they are, I think, the ideal beginner fish. What is the best filter? Aha, now this is a tricky one because, you know, I've said I would say the best performance you're going to get out of filters would be a sump or will be a canister filter, but most of us don't need that much filtration. So I've said, you know, if most people invest that kind of capital when they don't actually need it for the fish that they keep. But if you're going to have Malawi's or Oscars, yes, definitely you're going there. As far as canisters for filters goes, you know, I really haven't used much in my fish keeping career. I used a couple of brands, and I can't speak about the FX Fluval series. I've never used that, or the RSA Biomaster, or the EOM. But for me, the best canister filter that I've actually used were the Fluval series filters, the Fluval canister filters, the 307, the 407, the ones that are slightly below the FX series, which I have never used. I think those are good quality canister filters. As far as the other filters go, you know, I have many. I've got internal power filters, I've got bubble up sponge filters and so on. But I do like a hang on back filter. I think it's very good value performance wise, and I like the ease of maintenance. I've got a Tidal 55 on this aquarium, but I'm not going to pick the Tidal 55 as my best hang on back, because none of the hang on backs in my opinion are perfect. The Tidal, the pump is very nice. The C-shape pump I like, and it's very easy to clean, but there's some design faults in the Tidal. They should have made the bottom of a basket a bit broader, and they should have made that media basket a lot of small holes, not a few big holes, because it clogs too quickly, and when it bypasses partially, still works. The tank's not going to have an ammonia spike, but it's irritating that performance sort of visually drops, and I end up cleaning the filter, even though it's easy to clean, every week or so, and I don't like that. So I would go back to the Aqua Clear. It's also not perfect. I would have liked the pump to be inside the tank, but I would go, my best hang on back filter would be the Aqua Clear. I will just make sure that it doesn't sit high above the water level. It must be as close as possible as you can to the water level, because if a power fails, it shouldn't back siphon too much. but it's just, but the water can back siphon, but still be keep the media wet and still be above the motor, so that it can restart the circulation once the power goes on. That's a big drawback of the aqua clears if they're too high above the water level. So I like the bigger aqua clear hang-on back filters. That would be my best hang-on back. What is the best planted substrate? Now I've got mostly dirted substrates here. I like them. They're good for setting up an ecosystem. It's cheap and it works really well with your low-tech sort of plants. I don't know, if you add CO2 with those more sophisticated plants, it will work well too, I suppose. I like the deep dirted substrate, but if you don't want to go into all the technicalities, and this is also a substrate that will work well setting up an ecosystem, and if you have a budget for it, and this is not a budget video, so we're pretending money is not an object here, I would go for aquaswell. I would go and get myself some Amazonia or Easter aquaswell and do the substrate of a planted tank with that. I think it only reason because it's just it's a more dynamic substrate. It absorbs from the water also, and it's just easier. It's easier just pouring the aquaswell in than it is than putting the dirt there and capping it. There's a little bit of a more process involved in that of what you have to do. So I would go best substrate for planted tank. I just go for aquaswell in that case. I had in the past, but I haven't got it in my tanks now just because of experimenting and budgetary constraints. So that is the substrate, the best heater. Now we all have horror stories of heaters, and I've got a cheap Chinese brand in here called VR Aqua that has served me well, and I've got a small little nano heater that's got the thermostat on the outside of a tank. I think it's called an Aqua one. I'll put it up here, and I think that's my best nano heater. But for the normal size aquariums, there's a heater called a Jaeger. I know you have them in the States as well. It's a very solid heater, thick glass tubes, not easy to break it, and it's got the heater itself hasn't got these rows of spring coils. It's got one spiral coil going over, and what I found of that in the past with the Jaeger heaters, yes, they're expensive, but you get more out of a heater, and they don't get stuck, you know. So I would go for the Jaeger heater. For example, where you need a 300 watt heater like this aquarium, you can get away if it's a Jaeger with a 200 watt, you know, because it heats a bit better than your standard heater. So that's what I would go for there. What is the best beginner plant? There's another thing. Now, Anubias, it's almost like a plastic plant because it's an epiphyte. You just stick it there, and it'll survive just on the fish waste and very, very little, very moderate light. Just a normal LED lamp would even do it. Or sometimes if a room is well lit, it will even go in the ambient light. But Anubias, the only reason I say it's not the best beginner's plant, because you want it also to help with the ecosystem, to remove waste. And Anubias is very slow growing, so it's not the best waste remover. I think the best beginner's plant is Vallisneria. It takes a bit of patience, it takes a while to kick off, but once there's enough nutrients in the substrate, where there's root tabs, dirted substrate, aquaswell or just plain dirt, plain fish poop, once it takes off, it grows very fast. You have to trim it out all the time, but the fast growing Vallisneria quickly gives you a nice background curtain in the tank. It breaks the lines of a tank, and it does a great job of keeping up with your water quality. And all you really need, some food must land however way in the substrate, and you must have a half decent light, not an expensive one. It must just have light, you know. So I would say best beginner's plant would be Vallisneria. Well, those are a few of what I think are the best. What about lights? I've forgotten about that. Now, I've got to say, you've got to take it with a bit of salt with what I've said, because I haven't got any high-tech lights. But if I had to do it again and I had the budget, I'd probably try a Chihiros. I've seen it in the shops. It looks very impressive to me with plant growth and the way the light looks. But I would say, just from the light that it produces, not necessarily best build quality, it's this one here. It's an Aquanice Neo Helios. I think it's now a Debo, but it's a full spectrum light. And I think that gives off a light that you can see how the plants are growing here. So I would say that would be my top choice for a light at the moment. Well, those are a few best of products that I like to use. Let me know in the comment section, you know, which are your preferred products. or ask me of anything else that you might want to know the answer to, what I think is the best. Of course, limited to what I have used and what we have available here in South Africa. Guys, if you've watched this long, please smash that like button, and thank you for subscribing. And if you haven't, please consider doing that. And until I see you again, take good care of those domestic denizens of the deep.